This is a brief introduction to overcoming negativity, Pathwork Lecture 176, which is the topic for September 2016. The lecture starts off by working with the idea that negativity is a matter of attitude. In other words, it's not that we are bad, but that we have a bad attitude. And the attitude brings together our negative feelings, our negative emotions, and infuses them into situations so that negative consequences occur from that. There's another lecture, I quote many lectures in my study guides, and that's Pathwork Lecture 195, and it talks about differentiating between ourselves and negativity. So this is part of the attitude described in Lecture 176, that it's important to understand the difference between our divine selves and the negativity that we have attracted and allowed to operate within us. Then it gives a fairly clear and crisp 4-step process for overcoming negativity. The first step is to see it. Now the guide gets a little verbal here, and he says you have to find, determine, acknowledge, see, accept, and observe the negativity. So you might think of this as homework. You need to do your homework. What is negativity in your life? How does it manifest? What's going on? When does it happen? You need to see it so that you can work with it. The second step is to acknowledge your feelings and reactions to negativity. Now, in this step, it can be very challenging, but terribly important, to acknowledge what Pathwork terms as negative pleasure. And that is that we take pleasure in being snarky or rude, putting somebody down. Now, there's other lectures on that as well, but the basic is this. If you can't find good pleasure, then you try to find pleasure even if it is negative. But if you don't see that as a crutch and continue to try to receive and enjoy and experience good pleasure, then you're left with negative pleasure. And you will become dependent upon it for any pleasure in your life. We become attached to it. If that has happened, you need to see it. And this is where you have to feel it and notice your experiences. It's a very personal experience to find negativity in our lives. The third step is to once again see the consequences of this, to explore the consequences and ramifications of negativity in your life. Sometimes we think, well, it's only me, it's only my attitude, and we don't realize the sequence of events that may happen. Sometimes I describe it like this. If I'm at work and I'm having a very, very stressful day, I may come home and yell at the child, argue with the spouse, or kick the dog. Okay. This is just displacement. But it's negative. It doesn't help. It doesn't do anything constructive. And like water, it continues to go downhill. And these are the ramifications of being negative, of not taking responsibility for our feelings and emotions. Now, the fourth step is the hardest. And that is that once you've seen this, once you truly understand it, and you have felt it, you have an experience of this, you need to change. And in that change, things are going to happen differently in your life. Okay, so it's a process to change, to be different than you have been. Okay. This lecture also has a section on prayer and meditation. And in that section, it talks about, I'm joking, but good prayer, bad prayer, mature prayer, immature prayer. And the guide talks about how a mature prayer is about asking for help and assistance in being able to see things, in being able to face things, rather than an immature prayer, which can sometimes sound like, please take this away, please fix this. So it's up to us, but we can ask for help. And then there's a section on defenses and pseudo-solutions. We have to see where we have prevented ourselves from seeing our negativity over time and work on those defenses, because they're not needed if we're going to be honest, but also we need to experience a little vulnerability. We were defended, and now we're going to put those defenses down. We're going to feel experiences that we have not been felt before. So that's a rough outline of this lecture. Working with negativity is very difficult. It tends to bring up defenses. People feel that they're bad. If they talk about the things that aren't right, that they're bad. Nobody wants to be bad, and we all suspect that there's a part of us that's not aligned with the divine. So our defenses come up. Another thing that happens is that we will tend to want to shift the attention to something else. So there will be blame or calling out other things. When we work in groups with negativity, we need to work very slowly, very carefully, very softly, so that we don't trigger too many defenses and we don't get into the blame game, which is only distraction. So in doing this with a study guide, I encourage you to take your time. There's no rush. You can take all the time you want. And try to do it in layers. So you see negativity at work for a while, which is a perhaps more objective place to see it, before you are looking at negativity in your home or negativity in your relationship. Give yourself a break. Practice the skills. Practice the concepts in a place that doesn't trigger you too much, where you can go home and relax and get away from it for a bit, even though you may get up the next morning and go in and face it again. Rather than making it very intense and very upsetting when your skills have not been well developed yet. I invite you to look at the lecture. It's a wonderful lecture, and thanks for listening.